everyone, and welcome again to another edition of the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perello. My guest on this edition of the program is on a mission. He's been on a mission now for quite some time. His mission, basically, is to meet 10,000 people. Some might say that's near impossibility. Some might say only 10,000. Well, we're going to go right to the source of this mission. Rob Lawless joins us. Rob, it's a pleasure to meet you, make your acquaintance, and talk about this initiative that they're currently on.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love the intro. Some people did think it's impossible, still do, and people are like, "When are you going to go to 20,000?" So I hear both those things.
And we'll find out where Rob is in reaching his goal of 10,000 people. But I can tell you this much: Rob has literally crossed the country numerous times in meeting people, and he basically wants to meet people and spend an hour with them, learning something about them, and maybe they learn something a little bit about Rob. Rob is a native or lived in Norristown for some time, correct?
Yeah, I'm from Norristown, Pennsylvania, and I live in Philly now.
Okay. So, what set you on this journey? I mean, some people might say in this day and age that we're living in, post pandemic, where interpersonal communication sort of fell by the wayside, what made you decide that you wanted to not only meet people, but meet 10,000 people in the course of this project you're involved in?
So I went to Penn State University, so in the area-ish, I guess. And as you know, it's a big school, and I'm the youngest of three in my family. So my older sister went there, my brother went there, and when I got there, I kind of knew what I could get involved in. So I was part of the Penn State Dance Marathon right off the bat. I joined a fraternity that was restarting. I was part of Habitat for Humanity. I was a tour guide for prospective students, and I was part of our homecoming efforts. So I built this very large organic network of friends, and it drove a lot of the fulfillment that I got out of school. And I noticed the majority of the value that I got from Penn State was in the connections that I made, not in what I was learning in class for my finance degree. And sure, that was valuable too. But when I graduated in 2013 and I went to Deloitte Consulting, I felt like I didn't have that connection anymore. I didn't have the authentic connection. And I struggled with going from a campus where I was running into people that I knew all the time to sitting in a cubicle, staring into PowerPoint slides and Excel sheets for 12 hours a day. And I minored in entrepreneurship at Penn State. So there was always part of me that wanted to do my own path. Like in high school, if you asked me what I wanted to do, I'd say I want to own my own business, but I didn't know what that would look like. And at Penn State, there were tech entrepreneurs, but they'd always say, learn to code, learn to code. And I didn't want to do tech. My interest was in people. So it was January of 2014. I was at Deloitte Consulting still, and I wrote in my iPhone notes, I'm going to spend 1 hour. Actually, it was 10 minutes with 10,000 people. I just wanted to introduce myself to 10,000 people because I was really curious to see what would happen if you did that. And then I realized, like, I left Deloitte, I went to a tech startup in Philly called RJ Metrics. And when I was there, I was doing 30-minute sales calls, and I realized how surface level 30 minutes could be. So I thought, instead of 10 minutes, I want to do an hour with each person. I moved into Philly for that job, and I started to see Philadelphia as my campus as opposed to Penn State. And I thought I can get to know people here the same way I did at school and maybe create that same environment for myself. And also I can share people's stories and give people who follow along the perspective that I'm gaining through this project. And I wanted to be a positive example of connection for people. So I started reaching out to people in September of 2015. This was like a year and a half after I'd initially wrote the idea in my phone notes. And then in November of 2015, I met the first person for my project, and I'm happy to talk about it, but kind of the rest is history from there.
Do you remember? And I know as you journey from the East Coast to the West Coast back to the East, up and down and all around, but do you recall that first person that launched this campaign?
Yeah, his name was Jim Brady. We met at Cozy, which I don't even know if that's still there, but it was in Center City. We grabbed lunch together. And at the time, he was running billypen.com. And the reason I reached out to gym was because BillyPenn.com was doing this Who's Next series. And it was like, who's next in the political
Mm.
scene, or who's next in the art scene, who's next in the culinary scene. And I figured that's a good way to diversify the types of people that I'm meeting. So I'll just find the people's emails from these lists and I'll message them to meet up. And I did do that for a handful of people. And that's how I drove some of my initial connections. And then people would be like, oh, who you should talk to is really interesting is this person. You should talk to my friend so and so. So over time, the word of mouth built. I mean, it took me 3.5 months just to meet the first 10 people. But then by that summer, the company that I worked for was acquired. I was laid off. And in June of 2016, I jumped into my project full time. And then I was meeting 10 people in 2 days. I started meeting five new strangers every single day, and that really ramped it up.
Explain for me and our viewers how this all works, because I suspect you're not just walking up, or maybe you are walking up to random people on the street, or if you're at a Starbucks and you're having coffee, do you go over and just strike up a conversation with a person, or is there sort of a roadmap or a way for you to reach your goal of 10,000? I mean, so are you just going up to random people, or you're actually making appointments, for lack of a better term, to meet these people?
Sure. So yeah, to date, I've met 6,169 people total. And of those 6,100 people, I have probably only gone up on the street to like three of them. The rest of them, I've rather emailed them like in the beginning because I was working in sales, so I would just reach out to people who I was thought was interesting through email or through Instagram, and I would ask them, I'd say, hey, I have this idea to spend an hour with 10,000 different people. Do you want to be one of the first 10? I'd give them a little bit of background on me, like from Norristown, worked at the startup, went to Penn State. And I told them I have nothing to offer you other than as my network grows, yours will grow with it. And people took to the idea. And then I started the Instagram account that I have, Rob's 10K Friends. And I was just sharing everyone's story there. And back in those days, like if someone liked a post, I would shoot them a DM and invite them to be part of it. If someone followed the project because they saw a hashtag or whatever, I would invite them to be part of it. So and then it just kind of it was more of like a, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. So as the word started to spread, and then as the media started to get bigger, people would see my account of like, oh, he's met 10 people. Oh, he's met 200 people. Oh, he's met 3,000 people. And they would just reach out to me on Instagram, or they would email me and say like, hey, I want to be part of your journey. So that's kind of what it is like now, where it's more people find me through word of mouth. I met with a friend of theirs or whatever. And yeah, it's great because it keeps it sustainable in that sense.
Are these face-to-face meetings, or are you doing telephone calls or Zoom calls? I mean, I would suspect, only because having been in the communications business now for like forever, it's better to sit across from someone and speak with them one-on-one and read their body language and make eye contact with them. When you're on the phone, there could be distractions on your part, their part. So are all of these transactions that you're having, all of these conversations that you're having, are they in person?
So the first 3,259 people were all in person. And that was many of them in Philadelphia. As you mentioned, I lived in Los Angeles for a year and a half. I lived in Hoboken for 9 months. I drove across the United States 6 different times. So I met people in person in 20 different cities along the way, but it would be like one person here, two people there. And then I'd wake up and drive to the next spot. But my intention was for every single one of the 10,000 meetings to be in person because I wanted to meet people from other countries and whatnot. But I figured I don't want to be able to do this from my bedroom. I want to be forced to go out and see the world because I wanted it to be an adventure. And then, of course, COVID happens in March of 2020. You can't go around meeting 10,000 people in that time. But it was actually a really beautiful pivot because I had all these, like I posted an Instagram post in March of 2020 and I said, hey, everyone, I'm going to do virtual calls now. If you want to meet with me, shoot me a message and we'll get it scheduled. And in 24 hours, I had 200 people message me from all over the world. And I had all these people that they thought they would never have the chance to be part of my project because of the geographic barriers. And then all of a sudden, I'm able to connect with them. So during COVID, when everyone else was isolated and they didn't have the ability to connect with people, I was meeting four new people a day. And now I've met people from over 90 different countries around the world. And I tell people like I feel like I went from being an American citizen to being a global citizen through that experience, which is great. And I continue to this day to talk to people from all over the world, which is awesome.
Yeah. Your goal is to reach 10,000 people. Do you have a parameter of time, or do you have it mapped out when you will reach that 10,000 goal?
The goalpost keeps getting pushed back. If you look at my initial emails to people, I said, I'm going to meet 10,000 people in approximately 4 years because I just assumed take a 8 hour workday, split it up into eight people. There you go, 40 people a week. But that was very naive and it didn't take into account traveling from spot to spot or writing about people or having lunch or going to the bathroom, like things that you need to do in your life. So then I was like, okay, I think it'll take about 10 years. And now I say, so I'm 33 now. I hope to finish by the time I'm 40 for no other reason. And I think it sounds cool to say I met 10,000 people by the time I was 40. So if it takes
Sure.
me to 42, that's perfectly fine. If I finish by the time I'm 38, that's totally cool too. But yeah, I think all in all, it's probably going to be closer to a 15-year project now. And I have the capacity to meet people in terms of the interest of people wanting to meet, but so as I mentioned, I went full time with it in June of 2016. I found financial stability through speaking engagements, and I started speaking about my project in 2021, April of 2021. So now I travel around. Like tomorrow, I'm flying to Orlando to speak at a conference down there. Last week, I was in Iowa. The week before that, I was in Fort Lauderdale. The week before that, I was in Phoenix. So because of all the travel, which is great because now I can get paid and support myself, I have less days to meet people. So I think it'll be like 7, 8 more years.
When part of me wonders, um, you're on this mission, which it seems to me the greatest networking initiative that is out there because of all the different people that you meet and all the contacts that you're making. Um, some would say an hour isn't long enough, hour's too short. Some might say an hour is plenty. What made you? I guess just you could sit down with someone and speak with them for like 4 hours at a time. I guess you had to set a parameter of time, or while you would be trying to reach your goal of 10,000, if everybody is sat down with and that meeting went more than an hour, you would probably never be as far along as you are today, as well as getting to that 10,000 goal. So, what made you decide on 60 minutes, on 1 hour as your parameter of time for this project?
I think it was just starting with that 10-minute idea, realizing how surface level that would be, and then being in that sales environment where I was having those 30-minute sales calls. And you talk about the weather, you talk about the latest sports game, you cover what you need to cover for the software product, and you're done. And I figured with an hour, that might give me time to run out of topics with someone to talk about. And if so, that would force me to dive a level deeper with them. So that just became, and there's a lot of like, there's people oftentimes tied to the 10,000 hours theory. If you do something for 10,000 hours, you're an expert in that field. I like that concept, but it was not an influence on why I chose 10,000 or the hour. But yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes an hour is not enough time with people, but it's enough time to open the door. And when you open the door, it doesn't mean that it's closed when that hour ends. You can walk back through that. And that's what I've been fortunate enough to see. Like you asked me if I remember everyone. Unfortunately, I can't remember everyone off the top of my head. I'm thankful I have the Instagram account for that. But I oftentimes have experiences here in Philly where I run into people from my project at a coffee shop or I run into them at the gym. My next door neighbor is someone that I met through my project. He found me this apartment. So I hear him walking his dog at night. And yeah, it's all of these, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, what can a 1 hour conversation lead to? Another interesting thing is there are people that I've met for an hour that I haven't seen or talked to since that time, but I still think about them every week. So it's like the influence that they had on my life has far outlasted that hour, even if we're not talking to each other every week.
I want to mention that if people would be interested um, in setting up a time or setting up an appointment or setting up an interaction with you, they can go to your website. Yeah, Rob's 10K friends, or you can go to roblawless.com, correct? Did I get those correct?
Yeah, so if they can go to my website, which is robs10kfriends.com. They can shoot me a message there. Roblawless.com is kind of my speaking site. So if they're interested in booking me to speak, they can go there. And then Instagram, if they're on Instagram, they can just go to my account, which is Rob's 10K Friends, and just shoot me a message there. And I'd be happy to meet. I'm always looking for more people. Or if they're not on Instagram, Rob's 10K Friends at gmail.com. They can shoot me an
I
email.
want to dive a little deeper here in terms of these interactions that you have, these meetings that you have had. I mean, was there? And I know, I know you're going to be discreet, and I wouldn't ask you to betray any confidences that some of the people that you met. But you know, come on, so you've met 6,000 plus already. Um, have there been any that have turned bizarre? Have there been any that have underwhelmed you in meeting people? Have there been interactions in which people were looking for one thing and you were looking, for something else? I mean, look, every interaction is going to be different. So
Mhm.
has there been anything that stands out and like, well, I didn't see that coming, or gee, that person wound up being really interesting. Give me an idea of some of the people that you've interacted with.
Yeah, I mean, I met a woman 2 Decembers ago, and her story really struck me because she's like 43 now. And when she was 10, she went to India because her parents wanted her to like get to know her heritage and whatnot. And during their trip there, when they were on one of their domestic flights, the plane crashed. And her
Mm.
mom, her dad, and her brother all passed away in that plane crash. And she was saved from the wreckage, and she woke back up in a hospital in the UK to the sound of her grandmother's voice. And she spent 4 months recovering from severe burns all over her body. And she told me when they finally gave her a mirror to look at herself, she thought that they were playing a prank on her because her face looked so different from what she had known. And she said she was a prankster as a kid. So she literally thought it was a joke. And so does these 4 months recovering, and then she leaves the hospital, and she said, Rob, that's when the bullying started. That's when people started throwing things at me to see if I felt emotion. People started crossing the street because they thought I had some type of disease. And it was just a big perspective, like an expansion of my perspective, because I can't imagine losing your entire family to a tragedy. And then she's like 10 years old, like going right into your teen years only to get bullied every day for the experience that took your family from you. So it just goes to show like you don't know someone's story until you take the time to get to know them. And there's another guy I met, he worked at the Sheraton Hotel here in Philly, and he was introduced to me through the Instagram photography community. His name is Chris, and I just figured that he was probably like a photographer who studied hospitality at Temple LaSalle or somewhere local. And turns out he's half German, half South African, was raised in Nigeria in the early years of his life. And when he was 16 years old, he went boating on the Hudson River with his friends in New York City. And that day he fell off of the boat, was run over by it, and had his legs sucked up into the engines. And he described it as if his legs were put into a blender. Like he sent me pictures after you could see where the blade had sliced through like the top of his foot and his calf muscle and whatnot. And he was given a 15% chance of living and a 12% chance of ever walking again. And he beat both those odds. And he's telling me this story as we're walking around Philadelphia. So to me, I thought, okay, I was way off on what this guy's story was going to be. But again, it's just you take the time to get to know each other. And I had someone a few weeks ago, I was at a lunch, who asked me, do you regret meeting any of the people that you've met? And I said no. And he said, come on, like, I'm sure there's people that you regret meeting. But my answer was no, because I see every interaction as an experience rather than a transaction. And because I go in with that mindset, if it goes wacky in some way, that's what the experience was. Or if it goes really great in some way, that's what the experience was. And I'm just here for all of it. Like I sit and I tell myself, you gotta buckle up and go for the ride because this is what you said you were gonna do. So, and I've had cool experiences too. Like I met a flight attendant in Los Angeles who gave me his buddy pass to fly anywhere. I ended up flying to Hawaii for 3 days, 4 nights. Met these two friends there just at a hostel. They were really cool. We spent the day together. This was back in 2019. I think it was last year. They ended up getting engaged to each other. And I was in Napa with some of my friends for a speaking engagement in November, and I got a text from this couple, and they said, Rob, I'm sure you remember us from Hawaii. We're getting married in July. We want to know if you will officiate our wedding. So I was like, yeah, for sure. So these are just the random little things that come from being willing to meet people for no particular reason. And that's why I wanted to go on the journey to begin with.
Yeah. You've never felt threatened or in a situation that you're like, I need to get out of here as quickly as possible.
No, thankfully. And I think part of that is I oftentimes meet with people now who found me through a friend of theirs. So they're like pre-vetted in a way. They're tied to someone else that I know. And then the other thing is I often meet people at coffee shops, at parks, in public places. So usually help is nearby if necessary. But yeah, I've been fortunate to be in that situation where nothing has happened, and I hope that continues.
We just have a few minutes left, and needless to say, I could go on and talk for another half hour or hour with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of this journey, when you reach 10,000, might you decide to go for 20,000? Is there, I mean, this has got the makings of a book all over it. I mean, you could sit down and, and highlight out of those 10,000 people your experiences. I mean, might you, if you have spare time, might want to pursue a book on this mission that you've been on?
Yeah, funny you say that. I signed to a literary agent last year and we put together a proposal. So, like a title, a book overview, a sample chapter, a marketing plan, my reach, etc. And my agent is currently shopping the book as we speak. So, if anyone sees this and they want to talk about a book deal, they can feel free to get in touch with me. But yeah, I think that will probably be the first of multiple books to write. And there's a lot to share from what I've learned. And everyone has always said that you got to write a book or you should write a book someday. And I think it would be a disservice not to give to the masses what I've learned. So I do plan to do that. And I plan to just grow as a speaker in the next 7 years. I think once I hit the goal, I don't think that I will go to 20,000. I think I will continue to meet people, like maybe two people a day or one person a day. Because for me, it's my favorite way to take advantage of life is to connect with the other people going through the experience. But I also think it'd be really cool to be a professor at a local university and have a course for first year students where they pair off one-on-one every class period and learn from each other's backgrounds rather than a textbook or a PowerPoint slide. So those are some of the long-term plans.
Yeah. In the few minutes that we have left, has this experience? I mean, if you go back to those days at Penn State, did you ever think that this is what would catapult you forward in this mission to meet 10,000 people when you were a college student? Did you ever dream of this?
I dreamt of being in control of my path, and I didn't know what that looked like. And so I know college version of me would be really proud of where I am right now and the fact that I get to go speak and people pay me for the wisdom that I've gained from my interactions with people. Like I'm very proud that I'm in that position. And it took many cycles of confidence and doubt to get to this place. And there are many times where I sat and I had to move back in with my parents multiple times, and many nights where I sat in my childhood bedroom and thought I was so dumb to think that this could work. But I guess with all people who are pursuing their dreams, like if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, inevitably you get where you need to go. And I know that I'll have many cycles of confidence and doubt going forward into the future, but I'm just like I'm rooted in the act of meeting people now. And I know as long as I don't lose my passion for that, that wherever the project is supposed to go, it will go. But yeah, I'm really happy that I had my Penn State experience, and I'm really happy that it's turned into this now kind of global experience.
Well, I want to wish you continued success. And if people are interested in learning more, you could check out Rob Lawless online. And of course, if you would like to sit down and spend an hour with Rob and learn something about him as he learns something about you, you go to robs10kfriends.com. You can actually set up a time there to meet Rob. He is a busy man. He is traveling, meeting people, but I can't think of a better person to sit down and share a cup of coffee with and gain some inspiration. It has been a pleasure, Rob, and I'm glad I know that we were trying to line this up way back before the holidays, and here we are. And I want to continue to wish you success, and hopefully we can sit down as you get closer to your goal, and we can talk more about your wonderful mission to meet 10,000 people.
Absolutely. And we'll have to sit down and grab a cup of coffee so you can be part of it.
I would love to. All right.
Great.
Rob Lawless, our guest here on this edition of the Philly Factor. My name is Paul Perillo. I want to thank you for your time, and we'll see you again next time here on the Philly Factor.